Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And now, here are your hosts, Scott and Jesse from CompassKnox.com.
Hello and welcome again to Compass Points, the weekly podcast where we talk about Knoxville news, politics, government, education, business, really whatever gets our attention. I am Jesse Mayshark, co-founder and co-publisher of Compass, which you can find at CompassKnox.com. And I am joining remotely with Scott Barker, also co-publisher and co-founder of Compass. How are you doing there in the Barbarian Studios studio, Scott?
Hey, Jesse, I am doing just fine. I hope that you are feeling better soon and can join us in the Barbarian Studios.
Yeah, I've got the first cold of the season, just kind of came out of nowhere and walloped me yesterday. So I'm currently on, I think, every cold medicine that we had in our cabinet. I'm drinking a big mug of peppermint probiotic tea with honey and lemon. If anybody has any other suggestions they want to send in, I am open. But hopefully we'll at least be able to make it through this podcast, Scott. We don't actually have a huge amount to talk about this week, a little bit of a quiet week on the civic front. We do have an interview coming up with Knox County Commissioner Larsen J. Going to be talking to him about a couple of significant issues. Also, some interesting developments in some local institutions turning toward various kinds of alternative fuel. I'm going to talk about that. There was some follow-up discussion at the school board about challenges to controversial books in school libraries and how those should be handled. And Scott, to start us off, I thought we could talk about, this is another energy-related one, kind of an energy is the topic of the week here, I guess, because U.S. Secretary of Energy, Jennifer Granholm, was here in Tennessee, in East Tennessee, this past week, to talk about the Tennessee Valley Authority's innovations in nuclear power. What's going on?
Yeah, Jesse, Granholm came in for a quick visit to the Clinch River nuclear site. A lot of people might know it as the breeder reactor site. It's down in Roane County, kind of west of the Oak Ridge National Laboratory, kind of a remote corner of East Tennessee. She came down there because that is where TVA is going to build, pending regulatory approval, a new nuclear plant. It is going to be have small modular reactors, and we've written about these before. I don't think we've talked about them on the podcast. Small modular reactors are, as the name states, small compared to big nuclear plants like Watts Bar. A reactor at Watts Bar will generate about 1,000 kilowatts or megawatts, of energy, and a small reactor is up to 300. So it's less than a third the size of a traditional reactor. It's also modular. It's most of the components are built elsewhere in a factory, and will be shipped on site and assembled there, which hopefully TVA thinks will reduce costs. But it's really would be the first commercial modular reactor approved in the United States, assuming the Nuclear Regulatory Commission approves it. Granholm came down to tour the site, which is basically a clearing in the woods by the Clinch River. At this point, there's some trailers there, and they've got some little kind of cute little picket fence corners set out in this open field where the corners of the reactors will be, but they're going to have 2 units there at the beginning. At least that's what they're hoping for. But it's an interesting project. They've already appropriated $200 million just to start. That's just kind of, let's get started. It's going to cost us $200 million. So who knows how much it's going to end up costing in the long run. But they partnered with GE Hitachi. They're going to be they built this type of reactor before. These types of reactors are similar to reactors that are in submarines. They're similar to those types of reactors, a little bit larger, but other countries use them, and GE Hitachi has built them before, so it's not a completely new design by any stretch of the imagination. And they are also building one in Ontario for Ontario Power Generation. That's a company in Canada. They are partnering also with TVA on this project, along with a Polish company, Synthos Green Energy. And they're all partnering together to develop this and build it. It is hoped by TVA and the Department of Energy. TVA is not in the Department of Energy. It's kind of its own entity off to the side. It's not in the normal framework of federal bureaucracy, but the hope is that this is something that can be easily replicated to scale in other locations. It's easy. These take a lot less property, a lot easier to find places to put them. They're actually kind of safer. A lot of it's underground. And the spent materials would be stored on site rather than taken anywhere, at least until the United States can figure out exactly what they're going to do with their long-term waste. But one thing that Granholm mentioned was it can, one of these can be built next to a large manufacturing plant and provide all the power for a manufacturing plant, period. Kind of a self-generating, a self-generating thing. Immediately when you're in Tennessee, what pops to mind is the Blue Oval Village in West Tennessee, where Ford's going to be building its mega plant. That now they're not doing that there. Don't get me wrong. But that's the type of thing where you could it's a big enough plant where you could put one of these reactors there and it could provide all the electricity for them. But that's kind of the long-term vision for this type of technology. First things first, you got to get the first one built, and that's the one at the Clinch River site. Right now, as I said, they're in kind of the design and initial approval phase. They have a site. They already have the site approval, obviously, because they're working at this site from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But the NRC also will have to give 2 more approvals. One, a construction approval once the design and everything is finalized, and then the operating permit once it's built. And one of the kind of barriers to this, not really a barrier, but is a challenge, is because this is a first of its kind type of reactor, commercial reactor. The NRC's never approved one. They don't know how to approve one, so they're learning as TVA is on what they should and shouldn't do, as far as approvals go. Like I said, there's plenty of examples from other countries, and it's not completely foreign to the industry. But the NRC has never developed a process for approval. If you wanted to get a traditional nuclear plant approval, hey, that's already set up. All the steps are already in place. All the requirements are already laid out. You already know all that. They're developing those as they go on this this process. But TVA is optimistic that this will happen. Maybe around 2027, they might end up getting construction approval, and that hopefully it would be able to go online in the early 2030s. Mm-hmm. TVA, of course, is looking to, they're looking to decarbonize their portfolio as much as possible. They're closing coal-fired plants. They closed the Bull Run steam plant in just near Oak Ridge, Claxton, just 2 weeks ago. So it's shut down for good. They're converting a lot of these plants to natural gas, which, while cleaner than coal, still produces greenhouse gas emissions, carbon emissions. TVA wants to be, and the federal government wants electricity to be carbon free, and then by 2035, I believe it is. But one of the things that the TVA is also working on, they talked a little bit with Jeff Lyash, the CEO, about this, is they're hoping that carbon capture technology will be able to be in place and capture the emissions, the carbon emissions from the natural gas plants, so they can get to zero carbon emissions. And all of that is toward that goal that just about everybody has now of being zero carbon by 2050. Pretty ambitious goal, but one that all the climate scientists say is actually going to be too late, a little too late, but to help with climate change. But that's the goal.
Right. Well, and this really shows a rededication to nuclear power exactly because of that, because of its lack of carbon footprint, right? But for many years, TVA had pivoted, and other power companies had pivoted away from nuclear energy because those larger plants that you're talking about, they were so expensive to build, they're so huge, and also for quite a while, they were pretty controversial. People didn't want them right in their backyard, and so is part of the thinking that these smaller plants will be more acceptable to like local communities or who are maybe around them? Oh
yeah, because they take up a smaller footprint. They don't need as big a piece of property, or you can put them on a property the same size, and they're more hidden, if you will. They don't have the huge cooling towers that that traditional nuclear plants have. One of the issues too is that this isn't necessarily a public acceptance issue. Is those large plants, they were almost, even though the regulatory stuff was in place, they almost reinvented the wheel every time they built one. Mm-hmm. They were new design, different designs for different plants and all that. The beauty of the modular model is that the components are built in factories, and they can be put together, and they're identical wherever they're put, so they're easier to operate, and it's easier to move the workforce from one location to another if you need to, and that sort of thing, and it's cheaper. So yeah, the one thing is that the move toward low to no emissions energy in response to climate change has changed a lot of public attitude toward nuclear power, in that because it is capable of generating large amounts of energy with no emissions, is kind of has in many people's minds has outweighs the risks of creating the nuclear waste. And that's one of the big things is, what are you going to do with the nuclear waste? Well, what we've ended up doing is just keeping them at the plant, which is not an ideal situation. But then again, there is never going to be an ideal solution to permanently store nuclear waste, given the half-life of spent uranium.
Right. Well, I guess, as you say, this is still some years off, but it does, and especially for TVA, this seems like it really does represent a pretty significant turn for them beyond what, I know TVA is also investing in wind and solar, but clearly these plants have the capacity to generate a lot more energy than you're going to get out of those.
Oh, absolutely. And TVA is, of course, now they recently finished, they had two of the traditional reactors just in recent years, have come online, one at Browns Ferry and one at Watts Bar. But as far as a new plant, this is the first new plant in quite some time. And they're, and again, I think that this all goes back to kind of the shift in public opinion on climate change, and the slowly dawning recognition by a lot of people that human beings can reduce carbon emissions and perhaps eliminate them, or at least come close to eliminate them. So,
right. All right. Well, certainly we'll follow that as it progresses at whatever pace that may be. A little bit of interesting discussion at the school board this week about controversial books. Probably remember a couple of weeks ago on the podcast, we talked about Moms for Liberty, the conservative activist group. Some of the local members of Moms for Liberty came to the school board last month and basically petitioned the board to change the way that it handles book challenges, concerns about books in school libraries with what they consider inappropriate material, sexually explicit material, etc. And the school system has a challenge process right now. It's been in place for many years, where any parent, student, or staff member can file a challenge against a particular book in a school library. And then that goes and is reviewed by an internal committee, and they make a recommendation on either keeping the book or not. And then if they decide to keep the book and the people who filed the complaint want to appeal it, that can go to the superintendent and then eventually to the school board. We haven't had any actual hearings come to the school board that I can remember, certainly not in recent years. But that process is there. And what Moms for Liberty was asking for was for the district to take a more proactive approach, where maybe, Moms for Liberty and others could provide lists of books that have been challenged other places, have been identified as, maybe books that have age inappropriate material or whatever in them, and kind of just give those lists to the school system and have school employees basically go through all of their books with an eye toward possibly age limiting some of them, or putting warning labels of some kind on them, or in some cases possibly removing them. So that's what they were asking for. At this past week's board meeting, at their work session on Monday, Superintendent John Ryswick kind of gave a report on that. There had been a discussion the week before at a school board policy review committee about that book challenge policy. And the gist of that, Ryswick said, was that both he and the majority of the school board basically feel like the process and the policy that they have in place is working, and they don't really see a need to revisit it. They think that it does what it needs to do, and they kind of didn't want to get drawn further into the whole murky realm of book banning and so forth. And the only member of the school board who actually spoke out in favor of revisiting the policy and really supporting Moms for Liberty was board chair Steve Triplett, who has kind of, in his time on the board, has kind of become, I would say, like the leading Christian conservative voice on the board. He said he felt compelled as a public servant. He felt compelled by the Lord to take a stand against these books. But it didn't really get any traction beyond him. And Triplett said that he and Ryswick had just agreed to disagree about it. And so it doesn't look, for the moment anyway, like there's going to be any significant push to change that policy or that process. And it was interesting, on Thursday when the board had their voting meeting at Public Forum, representatives from Moms for Liberty were not at this meeting, but they did hear from a teacher at West High School, Stacy Reese, who came and talked to the board and basically just really encouraged them not to change the policy or the process. And, she made the point that the school system has processes for evaluating books, and also all of the educational materials in the school system are selected by trained and credentialed and licensed state teachers and librarians according to guidelines that are laid out by state law. And so Stacy Reese's kind of pitch to the board was that, we're professionals. You hired us because we are professionals, and this is part of our job, is selecting appropriate educational materials. And if people feel like that there's been, something done wrong, there is an appeal process. But she just really pushed the board to not let sort of one group of people's particular, religious or cultural or other concerns dictate the content of school libraries for the whole county. And it seems like that is what's going to happen. I think they're just going to, at least for now, it seems pretty clear that they're just going to leave the policy in place as it is. And Scott, I've been interested in this because we've seen these kinds of challenges in districts across the country. And definitely in some places, they've really taken off and become big political issues and rooms full of parents screaming and yelling at school boards. And I don't know what it is about Knox County specifically. Like, we are a majority Republican county, fairly conservative overall. But I just haven't really seen any great upsurge of traction or concern here from parents or much of anybody else beyond the few who have come and talked to the school board about it. So I don't know if it's because, we're also the home to the university. We have a relatively highly educated local population. But it's just interesting to me that at least so far, that whole kind of sector of culture war, school board stuff doesn't seem to be getting a lot of traction here.
Well, a cynic would say that our kids don't read anyway, so who cares?
Well, right, yeah.
But you're right. We do have a fairly educated population, and that's obviously not the case here. I think that one thing, maybe it's the pragmatic streak that runs through a lot of East Tennesseans, and that it's good to read, and there are bigger fights to fight in education than this. I don't know.
That was something that school board member Christy, who is part of the Republican majority on the board, but she basically said, parents probably have a lot of other things they should be more worried about than what's in the school library. Like, most middle and high school kids these days have smartphones or have internet access one way or another. And of course, unlike school libraries, the content that you can find on the internet is not carefully screened and chosen by educational professionals for age appropriateness. And so she was just kind of saying that, parents who are really concerned about what their kids might be exposed to would probably do better to pay attention to that stuff than worrying about whether they're somehow going to go and check a book out of the school library and find something offensive in it.
Yeah, I think that not only do kids have access to it, but they're savvy too. It's easier. They've got their phone. It's a lot easier to access. If they want to access something like that, they can just access it on their phone. They don't have to go to the library, take the time to go to the library. It's available 24/7. It's like everything else in the instant culture that we live in, and that's the case. And there's some of us old fuddy-duddies who are big readers and love literature, who wish kids would spend more time in libraries reading and love books. But quite frankly, that's not how these kids access prurient materials, as it were. So, I think that a lot of people see that and see that, a book is probably the most benign method of getting across any kind of indecent material. So
right. Well, and part of the point that the teacher from West High School made is that these books are not pornography. These are works of young adult literature. Most of them well reviewed. Some of them award winning. The books that have been talked about, and they have some passages in them that include, some sex scenes, drug use, and things like that. And she said, to read these passages without context is to completely miss the point of, what books are about. Books are not, no book can be kind of boiled down to one random paragraph that happens to have, a sex scene in it or something.
Yeah. One of the things I thought that was interesting about this was this whole discussion took place last week, which was also, as we talked about, was the anniversary of the court decision that allowed Ulysses, the novel by James Joyce, to be sold in the United States. It was considered obscene by lots of folks then, but the point there was that the judge made in it is that there are some scenes in here that might that involve masturbation and other things but overall it's a book of literature, and it's taking it, and you take it in the entire context, and it's just fine. And is actually now regarded, I think, pretty universally as like one of the greatest books of the 20th century. Oh, absolutely. It's a masterpiece. And I think that any parent whose teenager could read it and get through it and understand it, because it is a very complex and difficult book to read.
I'm going to out myself as I have never read Ulysses. I read Dubliners and Portrait of the Artist as a young man, and that's as far as my Joyce got. Yeah,
I've read Ulysses. It is very difficult to read. It is it's a long-term. You learn a long-term how to give a long-term commitment to a project by taking on the reading of it. It's complex and very rewarding to me. But I was an English major in college, so I loved literature. I love literature anyway. But if I had a kid who read Ulysses as a teenager, I would be proud that they were able to make it through. The least of it would be worried about the prurient line or two that's in there. So,
yep. Well, we'll see if that bubbles up again, but for now, anyway, it doesn't seem like there are a lot of takers on the school board for pursuing it further. Mm-hmm. We will see. All right, let's turn back to energy. We were just talking about nuclear energy, but now let's talk about fuel for vehicles. And we had just kind of coincidentally two announcements this week about two local institutions pursuing or maybe slightly broadening their portfolio of alternative fuels, one of which was Pilot Flying J, based here in Knoxville, the nation's largest chain of travel convenience centers and truck stops. And then also Oak Ridge National Laboratory, in a very different way, is looking at alternative fuels. So what's going on there, Scott?
Well, first we'll take Pilot Flying J. They're, as you said, the largest truck stop chain, if you will, travel center chain in the United States. They've partnered with General Motors and a company called EVgo, and they're putting together a network of fast charging stations at their travel centers across the country, and they're just rolling them out. They've activated the first 17 of these charging stations. They want to have 200 online by the end of next year, and eventually a couple thousand online. The one of them is here in Knoxville at Watt Road, at the Pilot Flying J there. They're in 13 states. One of the things that they're doing is trying to address, the big concern I think a lot of people have still about electric vehicles is that you got to find a place to charge them, and especially traveling. They don't look at them as being a viable alternative for long distances because you don't know where where you can stop and recharge on your way, and that this kind of addresses that issue. These are all, Pilot Flying J's are all on interstates. So the idea would be that if you own an electric vehicle and you want to travel, say from Knoxville to Chicago, that you would be able to stop at a Pilot Flying J on the way and recharge if you need to, depending on the range of the vehicle that you have. And that network will be in place and it's be reliable and open 24/7 and all these things. So they're rolling that out. They have it's even of course they're high tech with it. They have apps that you can get. Either all three companies have apps that you can use. GM in their vehicles. If you own a GM electric vehicle, will be in your vehicle. You can get an app from EVgo or Pilot, and you can look and find out where the next charging station is, or and if you need to plan a trip, you can plan your stops along the way to coincide with where those are. You can even reserve time at one of the stalls to go in and do it. They're setting them up kind of nicely. They've got awnings over them to keep you from, because of the weather, things like that. So they're really making a big investment in the transition to electric vehicles. Now that's a slow transition. I think that less than 1% of the vehicles on the road now are electric, but it's growing. One of the statistics I ran across is that while there are only fewer than 1% of the vehicles on the road are electric vehicles, 5% of new vehicle registrations are for electric vehicles. So it's going to be it's a growing market. Pilot Flying J and General Motors and EVgo are all obviously betting that it's going to continue to grow, and they want to be in on the ground floor of places where you can go to charge.
And so then what is ORNL doing? They're looking at biodiesel.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, they're looking at, and they're looking to the high seas for this. They are partnering with Caterpillar, better known as a manufacturer of heavy equipment, but Caterpillar makes maritime engines, the things that drive the engines that drive cargo ships and ferries and tugboats and all those kinds of, all these ships. Those are usually those are all diesel engines. And if you have ever seen one of those big cargo ships at a port coming in, I got to when I recently went to South Georgia, was staying at the on the ocean at the mouth of the Savannah River and watching the cargo ships go in and out. They're huge ships, and they take a lot of energy to move, and they're powered by diesel. And it's a big challenge for companies that want to go green in any type of off-road situation. That includes those larger vehicles for construction that Caterpillar's most known for, but ships as well and things like that. It's a very very difficult way to come up with an alternative. One of the things that they're looking at ORNL is using biodiesel, methanol, essentially, to retrofit these engines to run on methanol. And they have one of the facilities that they have at ORNL is the National Transportation Research Center. They have one of these big, it's a 6-cylinder, which in the cards that doesn't sound like a huge engine, but these are big engines, 6-cylinder maritime engine that Caterpillar manufactures. They've got one there, and what they're hoping for is to be able to find out ways to really make it economical to retrofit and then use the engines and use methanol instead of diesel fuel. And of course, there's still combustion; it still burns. There's still some greenhouse gas emissions going on there, but it's a lot cleaner than coal, than diesel. And of course, one of the there's several technical problems like of course you don't use spark plugs in a diesel, but getting the spark to start the combustion is very difficult with methanol. So especially in a diesel type engine that doesn't have spark plugs. So they're looking to overcome some of the technical aspects of that. And that's something that we don't see on the roads, but you will see on the high seas. So if they're able to come up with some kind of solution that way.
Right. So a fair amount of energy innovation of one kind and another going on right here around us. Okay, we are coming up to the interview segment of the show. We talked to County Commissioner Larsen J. Partly about a program that is now entering its second year, the Junior Commissioner Program, where they recruit high school students to come learn about county government. And also, Commissioner J has been involved in pushing for a new way to fund school playgrounds in Knox County, looking for some equity there between, some of the lower income schools in the county that just haven't had the means to kind of raise their own funds to build playgrounds, which is what the school system has required for about the last 30 years. And we also chatted a little bit with him about the recent vote on the ambulance contract, which he was among 4 county commissioners who voted against giving that contract to American Medical Response. So, Seth, why don't we go ahead and cue up that interview? All right, our guest this week on the podcast is Knox County Commissioner Larsen J., who is one of 2 at-large commissioners on County Commission. That means he represents the entire county, and he is in his second term, and he is here to talk to us about a couple of recent issues, initiatives that he's been involved with, and also some of the big picture items that have come through commission lately. Larsen, thanks a lot for joining us.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thanks for having me.
So let's go ahead and start by talking about the Junior Commissioner Program. I know it's entering its second year, and applications are open right now through, I think, December 20th for anybody who's interested, any eligible students. So tell us about this program. I know you were really the one who kind of got this going.
Yeah, absolutely. This is, I'm really excited about it and excited that we're entering our second year. The Junior Commissioner Program is really a civics education and leadership opportunity for the youth of this county. So it's open to juniors and seniors that are Knox County residents. They can be enrolled in a public, private, parochial, or accredited homeschool program. And it gives students an opportunity to walk alongside us for a few months, understand what we do, how their government works, what our role is as an elected official, and really gives them an opportunity to kind of peel back the curtain and understand what local government does to impact their daily lives positively or negatively, and how we as elected officials make those decisions. And so it truly is an opportunity to bring back the importance of civics, but also bring the importance of local government to the forefront with a generation who is interested in impact. That's where the genesis came from this, from some frustration and some opportunity. In our last county-wide elections, I continued to be disheartened with how few people participate in voting. 1 in 10 registered voters showed up in the primaries, 2 in 10 in the general, and 4 in 10 participated in the national elections. And those are just registered voters, not even eligible. And I can't understand. We can't make it any easier or more accessible to vote, yet less people are participating. And at the same time, I was talking to and met several groups of high school seniors and juniors and was just amazed at their level of impact and engagement. They wanted to know who I was, what I did, what a local county commissioner did. They were trying to figure out how it all worked. And I realized that there's a generation right now where their commodity is impact. It's not necessarily money. It's not necessarily fame or social media. All those sort of things have been saturated in their lives. They want to know what's their role and where are they going to make an impact, and how do they fit in this bigger picture? And so I just sort of put the two together, frustration and opportunity, and said, why don't we engage with the next generation and see if we can instill the importance of local participation, local elections, and local governance. And it was a great success the first year. I'm thrilled that we're going to do it year after year, and hopefully it'll continue on from here.
Yeah. So talk about the kinds of things that the students who participate in this get to do. I mean, I know they come to county commission meetings, but what else do they do?
Yeah. So first off, the application process is very easy. It's all on our website, and it's a digital application, some essay questions. It obviously doesn't cost them anything. Each of our commissioners will go home for the holidays with their applicants and decide who their junior commissioner will be. And then they come back and really hit the ground running in January. Not only are they going to participate in our meetings, that might be a commission meeting, a workshop, a zoning meeting, some of the things that just sort of the parliamentary side of our role, but they're also going to walk alongside us out in the community. Part of the program is they will go out with us to maybe a town hall meeting or a constituent meeting or a cleanup day or something where we're doing something in the community to see what we do kind of in the trenches, if you will. And then additionally to that, something new we've added this year are a couple of field trip opportunities. We heard from the junior commissioners last year. They wanted to know more. They wanted to have more engagement. We didn't know how much we were overloading them, and they were like, no, we want more experiential. So this year we're going to be taking a couple of field trips. One, we're going to do kind of a law and order session where we go out to the detention facility and we hear from the sheriff and the DA and maybe the public defender and kind of learn about public safety and justice. We're going to go and talk to the engineering department, the health department, and learn more about sort of those vital roles. And then we're going to involve them in more team building and opportunities together as a group. So lots of new things. They're going to participate in a mock meeting where they actually are in their own meeting and get to debate different issues and try to convince each other, why to vote this way or that way. And then ultimately, walk away after 3 months getting a better understanding of what it's like to be an elected official, but also what it's like to help govern a local community.
Well, other than what you shared about the last year's participants wanting more, what have they said about the experience? What is the kind of the consensus of what that's like for them?
Yeah, we did a pretty extensive exit survey with them and before our kind of graduation banquet and got feedback. First off, they found it very valuable. They found it very digestible and understandable. But the feedback and the quotes we got were very in tune with exactly the purpose of the program. They said, I didn't understand how accessible my local government was. And now I do. I get to understand how tangible it is for me to make an impact locally. They can scream at the national news all they want, but they can actually call us and say, here's an issue in my community. Some of the other feedback was that they didn't realize how much of a voice people had and how impactful that was if you just show up. And so they got the understanding that impact on a local level is much more it's a much bigger voice than, of course, something on a bigger platform. And then on top of that, we asked them, we even asked one question of, would you ever consider running for office? Out of the 11 participants last year, 6 said, maybe I'd consider it. 4 said, yes, I'm really excited to run for office. And 1 said, not a chance. You guys are crazy. I would never do this. And so, it was some great feedback, but also some real honest feedback. And they were excited to do more and to learn more. They were happy to be part of the program. And I think the ripple effect of not only their education and engagement, but their families. I mean, when we had our final graduation banquet, we invited them to bring their families, their siblings, their parents, et cetera, guardians. And to hear them say, you know what, I didn't know who my elected official was before my son or daughter got involved with this. Now, not only do I know that, I know what you guys do. I know why it affects me. I know how it impacts my daily life. And I'm super excited to be a better, more informed citizen. And I will, some said I've never voted, but now I will. I get it, So the walkaways were great. And we instantly saw the value in doing this year after year.
Well, and there was, of course, a group of those students from last year who then, after the end of the program, and tried to advocate for their own resolution to be passed by county commission supporting Governor Bill Lee's calls for some sort of action on gun safety. And of course, that resolution didn't pass. And so some of those students got some real life experience in, yes, government is accessible and you can come and advocate for something, but you're not always going to get what you want, basically.
Absolutely. And it's a process. They understood that it's not a yes or no all the time. And it's not a difference between, deciding on something good or bad. It's a lot of nuance in politics and a lot of nuance in public service. And, you don't always get what you want, whether you're on my side or on the citizen side. So, yeah, it's been great lessons. And I think that the testament to, the program itself has also been in packaging and offering it to other people. I was able to have an opportunity to give a presentation at the Tennessee County Commissioners Association conference. And because of that, 9 counties have asked for the kit. We sort of packaged it up and said, here, we want you to start your own and we'll give it away. In addition to that, I was able to give a webinar for the National Association of Counties. And I think we're up to 12 or 13 counties across the country who have also asked for the kit. Now, whether they'll actually go through with it or not, we'll kind of monitor and see. But I think that what resonated with other elected officials around the state and around the country is, yes, we have got to find a way. And if it means skipping a couple of generations and going right to the generation of new voters coming in, we've got to find a way to engage people and help them understand that local governance is the most impactful, closest to their lives, and the most important.
Uh-huh. Well, Knox County leading the way in youth engagement there. And so people can find information about this and the application on the county commission website. And there will be 11 slots to be filled, one by each county commissioner. So anybody who wants more information about it can find it there.
Yeah, it's very, very easy. knoxcounty.org/junior commission. We had 70 applications last year for 11 slots. We expect to have over 100. So it's free. It's easy to participate. Everybody should encourage a junior or senior to apply, and they may be one of 11 junior commissioners that get a chance to have a voice at the table.
Right. Well, you've also been involved in something else having to do with young people, which is playgrounds. And we just wrote about this week, but this is really, again, something that you kind of championed. I think it was a year and a half ago, maybe, that you came to the school board and raised concerns about how playgrounds are paid for in Knox County. And that all led to this announcement this week of this new play space fund that the Knox Education Foundation is overseeing. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, years ago, I got a call from one of my fellow commissioners asking me if I would help raise money for a new playground at, I think it was Mount Olive Elementary School. And I, of course, helped and got involved and kept, trying to figure out why is this on the community? Why is it on the parents and the teachers in the community to raise money for a playground that's at a Knox County school? And so as I was helping raise money for that, I kept asking, and people kept saying, oh, well, this is, the policy of the school district is we don't do playgrounds. It's on you. And then I got involved with New Hopewell Elementary and raising money for them. And then Sunnyview Primary called me, and I sort of got to, people were like, oh, well, call Larsen, he'll help figure out how to raise money. And so I did a lot of fundraising to help them out. But I kept asking, okay, well, show me this policy that, schools don't do playgrounds. And everybody assumed it was a real policy. But it wasn't. It was the practice. And so for 30 years, really as a result of a budget crisis long, long ago, the school system sort of got out of funding playgrounds and said, it's on you, the community, the playground, the PTAs or the teachers or the parents or whatever. And it was never really a written practice, but they just sort of did that. And people said, well, if we need a new playground, we got to raise the money. And it felt something really, I don't know, it didn't feel right to me. In sort of a basic sense, it felt kind of like double taxation of like we use your taxes to build schools, but then we don't put them all together, and then we ask you to fundraise again. And of course, when you look at some of the harder, more economically, disparaged areas of our community, it's harder and harder to fundraise. And then the one that kind of broke my heart was Chilhowie Intermediate called. And they had taken like 5 or 6 years to raise $40,000. I mean, we're talking like pizza sales and car washes and all kinds of stuff. And then when they got to their goal, the price went up. And so their goal got extended, and we helped them close the gap. But when we celebrated that, the principal said, almost every kid who helped fundraise for this is actually gone now. And I was like, it just crushed me. And I said, okay, we've got to do something different with this. And so I went to the school board, I went to the administration and said, like, how can we change the tide on this? And even with new schools like Mill Creek, which is coming up in Hardin Valley, like they budgeted for a new school, but no playground. It was going to immediately be on the community. And so we took it in pieces. We sat down with the administration, we sat down with the school board, and several members, Daniel Watson kind of helped champion it for me on the school board to say, let's first and foremost just say, let's put a policy in place that says every new school that is built will have a new school playground as part of the capital budget. Let's just start there. Like, let's stop the practice and go to a new policy. We got that in place. We got that passed. And then we said, okay, how do we catch up for 30 years of kind of, challenged fundraising? And it was clear that a private and public partnership had to work. Well, I'm very fortunate to serve on the Knox Education Foundation board. I'm actually the chair of that board. And so I went to my fellow board members and said, why don't we spearhead it? Because this is a role of a private institution to kind of bring this up to snuff. Let's put together a 3-year initiative. Let's go raise a bunch of money. Let's take some public money. Let's take some private money, and kind of be the catalyst to say, let's catch up. And then at the same time, work with the school system to figure out how to maintain it going forward. So a couple of really key things happened last year. In last year's budget, the school system increased the maintenance fund on their line item. They actually put money into this play space fund, and they hired a full-time playground coordinator, inspector, person to just focus on this initiative for a short amount of time. And then we went and raised private funding, and we're still raising private funding. And we figured out what it would cost. It's about $4.5 million. We have about 2.2 million of that committed when we launched. And our goal is over the next 3 years to kind of catch up on 30 years of challenges and say, let's get every school up to par. Let's start with the worst of the worst playgrounds and then bring those up and put new ones in, and then basically catch everybody up with one-time money over 3 years. And then we've solved that problem, and then we can turn it over, and the school system is committed to then maintaining it and going forward. So it's an initiative to right a wrong a little bit, but also to help areas not have to spend their money on this. It pains me to think a child in our school system would be raising money to replace mulch or to fix a slide or to have a bake sale so that they can have a swing. And so I don't want to ever hear about that again. If they're going to raise money, it's going to be for field trips or for learning in the classroom or great initiatives or something like that. I think playgrounds are a basic need and necessity and part of our health and wellness, mentally and physically. And so I'm really excited about the Play Space Fund and launching it and getting everybody on the same page. It's taken a lot of work, and we got a lot of work to go, but it's a cool initiative. I think it'll help. And
people can, if they are interested, want to know more or donate, there's a website at the Knox Education Foundation page, right?
Yeah, it's Knox Education Foundation, and there's a link to the Play Space Fund. They can donate. We are going to need donations from the private community, and every little bit's going to help. But it's going to really make a big difference in our public schools and make a big difference with our students and their families who are going to, not have to do this again.
Right. Well, the other thing I wanted to ask you about was the ambulance contract that County Commission just approved last month. You were among the 4 commissioners who voted against giving a new contract to American Medical Response, AMR, which has been the existing provider and now will have a new 5-year contract. And we don't have to go into all of the details of this. I mean, it's a complicated issue, but you raised some fundamental concerns. And I know the contract came through a bid process. There were 4 different companies that put in proposals, and there was an evaluation committee that ranked AMR the highest. And you just basically said that because of the struggles that AMR has had in recent years, you feel like they've lost the confidence of the community and you weren't comfortable moving forward with it, right?
Absolutely. I did think there are some good things that came out of the process. I think the contract is better. I think having our 911 team do the dispatch is better. I think the mousetrap or the system is going to be better as a result of this. So I do appreciate the work of the administration to make a better plan going forward. But And I really wasn't talking about one company versus the other company, because it's not my job to pick the one. That's a process. There's a committee and selection. But when I did my due diligence, as I should as a commissioner, I started with the community, and I went out and I had over 100 conversations, phone calls, emails, a combination of sit downs with people. And out of that, I had one citizen give me some positive feedback. At one out of 100, over 100. And AMR has really struggled to actually provide the service that we're essentially asking them to do again. And I know that there's a lot of extenuating circumstances with workforce and COVID, but at the end of the day, you've asked for the job, and I just believe that you haven't done the job well. And so if you're asking us to give you the job again, I don't have the confidence that the community doesn't have the community has lost confidence in AMR to the point where they have said time and again, let me tell you how my family member laid here for hours waiting for an ambulance, or how I had to take somebody myself because I couldn't wait on them. I lost confidence in the company, and I think they have some financial challenges coming up in the next couple of years. I think that they have some workforce challenges. I spoke to people that work for AMR, people that work for the fire department, people that work in police. If the people in the trenches don't have confidence in their own company, if the people who have service connection points, whether it be the hospitals, the EMTs, the nurses, the police officers, the firemen, like if they don't have confidence and the community doesn't have confidence, I had a real hard time sort of getting to a justification of just because the process chose them that I was going to add my vote to it. So while I said I think the process is better and the mousetrap is better, so to speak, I just couldn't find a way to justify actually saying to AMR, like, I would pick you again as my choice. And if the community's lost confidence, I mean, prove me wrong. I told them, I said, look, I hope you're successful. I hope all the plans that you've said you're going to do better, are going to get better. But past performance is usually indicative of future results. And if you can prove me wrong, then I will eat crow and I will say you're awesome. But if they can't, then, so be it. And we'll start all over this process again. We've got to have confidence in our emergency services. It's the thing you never want to use and you never hope you have to be part of, but you have to have the confidence that when you pick up that phone and call for help, you're going to get response. And I know this firsthand. I have been a patient in a hospital, in an ambulance, in a trauma situation. And if I had been in my situation and it had taken hours to get an ambulance, I wouldn't be here with you today. I understand what that looks like. And so to me, there's not a lot of excuses to say we're not going to get better. And so I hope they are successful for the sake of our county. But I just couldn't vote for it.
All right. Well,
go
ahead, Scott.
I was just going to say, what are the specific metrics you're going to look at to where, if they meet, that would be the recipe for the crow you would eat. What exactly are you looking at that would make you alleviate your concerns about AMR moving forward?
Yeah, there's some really specific metrics. One would be how many times are they at level 0? And level 0 means that there are no ambulances available to come help you right now because they are tied up in other emergencies or they're not able to be on the road. And that is you would not believe how many times. I mean, right before the vote, like the Thursday before the vote at 4:00 in the afternoon, they were at level 0 with four people on hold before any new calls came in, which meant, like, if you're the fifth person, it's a long ways away. I think seeing those level 0s go down would show a measure of success, meaning you have rigs on the road ready to respond within an appropriate amount of time. I think the actual response times, those are measurable things that you can look at and say, how fast are you getting to help service people? I think the turnaround times and how many employees they have, how many rigs on the road, there's a lot of metrics, but what I'm most excited about is that our Knox County dispatch will own the software, own the data, and do the dispatch. And so we will be able to see in real time, how are they doing with our own data, with our own information, and be able to show. So if they can, build that confidence back in the community that when you pick up the phone, an ambulance is going to be able to help you, then great. Let's, congratulations. So we'll be able to see that in real time starting in the next, 6 months or so.
All right. Well, we will certainly be continuing to watch that. And I think that's a good place to wrap it up. So, Larsen, thanks again for joining us. Lots going on in your realm these days, and always good to talk to you.
I appreciate the opportunity, and Knox County is in a good place with lots of opportunity ahead. So I'm excited to be part of it and to represent the citizens out there, and happy to do so. Call on me anytime, and love to talk more about all the things that are going on.
All right, and thanks again to Larsen J for talking with us. Always a pleasure. Let's look ahead to what is coming up in the next week. We have several civic meetings of our local bodies. Everybody trying to get their business wrapped up before the end of the year, basically. Knox County Commission will hold its monthly work session on Monday, the 11th at 5 p.m. in the main assembly room of the City County building. A couple of interesting things on the agenda. We talked about a little while ago a proposed rules change for the Knox County Sheriff's Merit System Board of Directors. I have to always stop to remember the name of that because they changed it last year. And this has to do with whether people who serve on that volunteer board can also be involved in local political campaigns. They're currently forbidden from that. There's a proposal that would allow them to be involved in basically any local political campaigns and efforts except for people running for sheriff. So probably some discussion about that. And also some talk about a couple of planned developments. There's Prosperity Crossing, which is way out west at the western border of Knox County, kind of by the Watt Road exit there. This is a planned multi-purpose development, and the county has previously awarded it some tax incentives, but those are coming back for a revisit. It's a little bit complicated what's going on with it, and so we'll probably wait until next week to talk about that. I'm sure there will be some discussion of it Monday. And then they're also going to be voting on designating part of Magnolia Avenue as a new redevelopment area for some redevelopment of some historic apartment buildings there. And Scott, that kind of leads in nicely to then City Council meeting on Tuesday, because they're going to be talking about that and several other things there around Magnolia and in East Knoxville, right?
Oh, yeah. Magnolia Avenue is taking center stage on City Council next week. It's going to be they're going to be voting also on that TIF district. These are 4 apartment buildings that are empty. They're kind of neat looking. They're old. They were developed in the 20s and 30s, and there's a proposal to redevelop those into residences, and that's kind of in the middle of Magnolia, near Cherry Street. But there are also other things going on in Magnolia. There's a payment in lieu of tax agreement that's going to be on the agenda for the old Swan Bakery building. The Knox Leadership Foundation has bought it. They are going to use this tax incentive to help fund renovations to it to house their Knox Works program, which is a kind of a job training program primarily aimed at people who have been incarcerated and otherwise have had issues with the law, and it's they're wanting to expand that program both in the amount of offerings and then the number of people they serve. This is an unusual pilot agreement because it's a nonprofit instead of a for-profit entity that's doing it. And we'll be taking a deeper look at that next week. Don't worry. There's and then there's also the city on Friday announced that Burlington's going to get a new fire hall. The old one, fire hall number 6, there in Burlington, is small. It's cramped. It's old. It is more than 80 years old. It's been in bad shape. In fact, it's been so bad that the fire departments had to run has had to not use it for a while so they can make some repairs on it. The fire department's moved back in for now, but they're going to build a new one about a block away on essentially an empty lot, a parking lot. And Mayor Kincannon made that announcement on Friday. They're talking about that as being part of the investment in the Burlington community that they made. That's going to be on the agenda as well. So there's going to be a lot to do with Magnolia Avenue next week. We'll go into great detail once City Council gets a hold of it and has some discussion, because there will be quite a bit of discussion about it, because it's there are a couple of unusual factors that are going on with these projects, and so that's going to take up most of City Council for Tuesday. On Thursday, the Planning Commission is going to meet. They're going to be considering city development issues again as well. I mean, they, in addition to the rezonings and plans approvals and those kinds of things, they're going to reconsider Mayor Kincannon's middle housing proposal, where they did that a couple of months ago. It did not pass because of a tie vote. There were a couple of members who were absent. But that's the proposal that would allow duplexes, triplexes, small apartment buildings to be built in just about all residential zones within the traditional neighborhoods that are inside the I-640 Beltway. And so there have been some tweaks and some minor changes to the proposal, but it's back in front of county planning commission for a second try, and that'll be kind of the one of the big focus issues that they're going to be considering.
And what time is that planning commission meeting?
Planning commission meeting is at 1:30 p.m. Thursday afternoon. The city council meeting, by the way, is at 6 p.m. on Tuesday. Right. Both are in the main assembly room of the city county building.
Also on Thursday, it's worth mentioning, that is the deadline for candidates in the 2024 Knox County elections. That's Knox County commissioners, school board members, or a couple of countywide offices on the ballot. And so we already have a host of candidates who have pulled nominating petitions and a lot who have turned them in. But this coming Thursday is the actual deadline for that. So that's going to be our first chance to really see what the field looks like for those races. And those are coming up pretty soon because the primary is the first week of March. It's the same day as the presidential primary. So we're going to come out of the holidays straight into a pretty busy campaign season. And then speaking of campaign seasons, Scott, we just had one wrap up in the city. And the results of that are going to be on display this coming Saturday, right?
Yeah. One could say it's the official, finally, conclusion of the 2023 election cycle. It's inauguration day. Mayor Indy Kincannon will take the oath of office for her second term. The other winners of the during the election, and that's Amelia Parker, city council members Amelia Parker, Lynn Fugit were reelected. Debbie Helsley won a seat on city council as well. Charlie Thomas was reelected. He didn't have an opponent, but he was reelected. So all four of them are going to be taking their oaths of office for this term, and for the first time in since the 1980s, we'll have a new municipal judge taking the oath of office. Tyler Cavanis will be sworn in as well. And then following the ceremony, City Council is going to have a special session where they're going to be, it's kind of their organizational meeting. They'll be selecting a vice mayor, a chairman of the beer board. The beer board is the City Council, same membership. But it has its own chair, so they'll have a chair of the beer board. The vice mayor will be selected, and then a representative for the Knoxville Transportation Authority will be named as well. And then there's going to be a little reception afterwards. So,
right. I assume there will be some pomp and circumstance. Probably we'll get to hear some kind of inaugural address from Mayor Kincannon, I imagine. Yeah,
I would imagine there's going to be some of that. It is a good opportunity for speechifying, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we have a little bit of that. And that happens at 10:30 a.m. and it also is in the main assembly room of the City County building.
All right. Well, we will be back next week to talk about all of that and anything else that happens. Hopefully I will be back there in the studio next week. Let's hope. Thanks as always to Seth Barber, Lord Seth Barber, our producer at Barbarian Studios. Our theme music is by Will Wright. I am going to go make another cup of tea, and we will talk to you next week.
Welcome to Compass Points, the weekly podcast for CompassKnox.com. CompassKnox.com is your best source for news and politics in Knoxville and Knox County. Your hosts today are Scott Barker and Jesse Mayshark, the founders of CompassKnox.com. You can find their daily in-depth coverage and subscribe at CompassKnox.com. The Compass Point podcast is brought to you in conjunction with Almost an Agreement. Almost an Agreement is a layman's attempt to get a handle on the workings in government and politics that we deal with every day. Check them out at almostanagreement.com or subscribe for free on your favorite podcast provider. If you'd like to learn more about the topics discussed on today's podcast, go to CompassKnox.com and subscribe for in-depth coverage and much more. And many thanks to William Wright for composing our theme song. Compass Points is a partnership of Barking Shark Media and Barbarian Productions, and recorded by Lord Seth A. Barber at Barbarian Studios, Knoxville, Tennessee.